My wife abandoned me and left behind a letter explaining why. I unsuccessfully spent years trying to track her down, but now she's back begging to reconcile. Prior to my wife abandoning me, she had been acting strange for months now. She was working overtime a lot and always on her phone, and then seemingly totally out of the blue, I came home from work one day to a totally empty house. Nor my wife, nor kid, nor any of their stuff, or even our emergency cash was there. That's when I saw the note she left for me. In it, she said that she was taking the kid and leaving me to be with someone who makes me happier, someone I knew. She wouldn't disclose who it was. After reading the letter, I broke down. The pain I felt during the first night was indescribable. I drank a lot that night. It honestly felt like she had taken a dagger and put it through my heart. I read the letter over and over, and I always had one question. Who was this person that I knew, and why would she tell me it's someone I know without telling me who? Simply to drive me insane? Either way, I got to work and started looking closer into my circle to see who the person could be. She was always close to my old friend Nick, but that was because we all went to high school together. I had Nick over a few times, and they would casually bring up the science projects they had and reminisce about the simpleness of the time, but I was almost sure a relationship didn't form from that. Then I thought about maybe my coworker Trey. She always talked so highly of him. She would compliment how sweet he was and how he drove a nice car, but she never seemed to be interested in him. I spent the next few weeks cycling through the potential partners. The thought of her loving someone else, someone that I knew, was driving me mad. I drank a lot and couldn't fathom the thought of the other man getting the same treatment and happiness I got from our relationship. And on top of that, she took my kid. A lot of thoughts raced through my head the next few weeks. I retraced my steps throughout the past 6 years. We had been married, trying to figure out what went wrong and who could be satisfying her in ways that I couldn't. Months went by. I considered divorce or telling the police my kids had been taken wrongfully from me, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I had no motivation to. At times, I would lay in the bed for hours at a time. My mattress became my solace. The indent in my bed grew more human-shaped as time went on. The house became filthy, and everyone around me felt like a suspect. I hadn't gone anywhere for weeks, other than work and home. Every time I tried to go to sleep, I saw my wife Emily in my dreams, laughing with this mystery man, and my kids beginning to call them dad, and them enjoying the family that I created. I checked all of her social media accounts, and there had been no change, no new posts, or any new followers. I called all of her coworkers and her job each day, and they would always tell me they have not seen her. I've emailed her and called her from different numbers, and have had no luck in contacting her. My last resort to find her was public court records. I went there to see if there were any records about a change in property with her name on it. I found nothing. By this point, I had lost my family, my friends, and my will to live. I even considered hiring a private investigator, but there was no point. This was when I decided to give my brother Isaac a call. I don't know what I expected from this. From that conversation, I realized deep down that I wanted to live, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have called him beforehand. We ended the call agreeing that I should see a therapist. So the next morning, I wake up and try to do my usual routine and call up some therapists in the area. I finally found one that specialized in family-induced trauma. Her name was Mrs. Smith. I spent 2 years seeing Mrs. Smith, and during this time started coming to terms with navigating life without my wife or my kids. The pain in my heart and insecurity in my mind was replaced with rage and resentment for Emily. I usually dealt with this frustration by going to the gym 7 times a week. I also changed my diet and began cooking more. These changes, paired with the therapy, helped my mental and physical health. I became really ripped. I felt good and looked even better. Things started to look up from here. That was until I stumbled across a letter in the midst of a bunch of piled up junk mail in the mailbox. It was from Emily. I rushed inside and threw the rest of the mail on the kitchen table. I was eager to see what she had to say to me. The audacity she had. I felt a range of emotions. I felt anxious to find out the truth and resentment for her decision. In the letter, it read that leaving me was the biggest regret of her life. Her partner had been laying hands on her for months on end, and she showed regret for leaving me, then told me that I was the true love of her life and that no man could ever compare to me. At the end of the letter, she asked to talk in person and begged for my forgiveness. I couldn't believe what she was saying. Not once in the letter did she tell me where my kid was or if they were okay. I considered driving to the return address to see them, but if I wanted to see my kid again, I knew I had to be careful. Instead, I sent a return letter and agreed to meet up at a local coffee shop. We met up later that month, and she showed up with this huge getup. She wore makeup that made her eyes sparkle. She smelled really good like warm cookies and walked towards the table I was sitting at. Red lips wrapped around a smile greeted me as she sat down. I could tell that the reason she dressed this way was to seduce me and try to make me remember everything we had. It's why she wore the shoes I always told her were my favorite on her. We began talking, and she asked how I was doing and what I had been up to. I tell her that I've been going to therapy to heal the parts of me that she broke. She said how sorry she was and how much she wants her family back. She told me about how the guy she left me for was cheating on her since the time she left me, and it was taking a toll on her mental health. The main thing that haunted me was the fact that my kid would grow up without me. I asked her who it was, and she revealed that it was my brother Isaac. I felt my blood boiling and had so many questions. To think this was the person that talked me out of taking my own life. This was the person that was the closest person to me. I was shown how grimy Emily was, but Isaac? Before I let anger take control of me, I was snapped back into reality at the the thought of my kid. I let her finish her spill and asked where our kid was. She told me that I could see him and that she'd bring him to the house. I told her that wouldn't be necessary because I didn't want her near my house and dropped the bomb on her that I wouldn't be getting back together, then told her I wanted to share custody of the kid. Well, she began raging in the coffee shop. She knocked over my coffee and told me that I wasn't being considerate of our family and throwing away everything we had. I told her that my only priority was to see my kid and that she had blown her opportunity to fix our relationship the second she decided to leave home and took the kid with her. She screamed loud enough for the entire shop to hear. She told me that I was not the father of our kid and that I was chasing a dream that could never come true. She said the real father was actually Isaac, and that was the reason they had the same dark hair and blue eyes combo. She told me that I am less of a man, and that she told me the only reason she actually wanted to come home was because I had more money and put up less of a fuss. I became heated. The rage and resentment from years ago that I thought were suppressed built up inside me, and all I could see was red. She never loved me. She had always been interested in my brother. I lost a wife, a kid, and a brother all in one day. The scab that I thought was healing was ripped off. We got in this huge altercation, and I don't remember much from it. Emily was screaming at me, and as I got up to try to leave the scene, I was conked in the back of the head with something heavy. I woke up in the hospital. I saw red around me. The doctor came in and told me that I was hit with a coffee pot and that they had to remove shards from my dome. That's where I'm at right now. Update. A few days later, I was finally released from the hospital and they called a taxi for me. As I waited for the taxi, all I could think of was losing my family all over again. Not only had my wife left me for my own brother, but the kid that I was raising was not mine. I felt betrayed by everyone around me. I felt so alone. As the taxi arrived, I told him to take me to the nearest bar. At the bar, I was on my fourth drink, and the feelings that I was running away from only intensified. I stood up after being there for hours, and the last drink hits me like a truck. My head was swimming and the room was spinning. I stumbled outside to go home. I couldn't make it to the bus stop. I felt weak. I blacked out and landed on the sidewalk. I didn't wake up until the next morning. I woke up with my head still spinning and my wound was throbbing. I looked around to see people around me. Someone spoke to me and asked what I was doing there. I was in too much pain to speak. I laid there motionless. A few minutes later, some random guy walked up to me and asked if I was looking for a zip. I laid there puzzled as to what a zip was until he pulled it out of his pocket. He showed me a powdery substance. I had never done substances before, but at this point, I wanted anything to take the pain I was feeling. I truly had nothing to lose or live for anymore. I reached for my wallet and noticed it was gone. Someone must have taken it while I was passed out. I asked him to help me out this one time, and he gave it to me. He told me I had to leave something to make sure I'd come back. The only thing I had on me was my phone, and there wasn't much use in it anymore anyway. The feeling I felt after using it for the first time sent me to the moon. I felt like I was on top of the world, and the thoughts of Emily and the kid were still in my mind, but I didn't care anymore. I finally felt happy. I rode this wave for a bit until it began to wear off. Coming down was the hard part. After a few hours, the pain and sadness attached to the memories set in again. I needed to get that feeling again. I got a taxi home and got one of my debit cards from home and headed to the ATM. I withdrew $500 and went back to the bar. Meeting the plug at the bar became a routine thing for me. I had plenty in savings, and so for the first little while, things were okay financially, even despite my habits. However, after losing my job from too many call-outs and still having a mortgage, my savings began looking light. That's when I made a bad decision. I knew I could get more if I sold the house and lived in an apartment, so that's what I did. Before I knew it, I had lost everything I had. All of my belongings were either sold or lost because I couldn't make the payments anymore. I began living on the streets near the corner that the bar sat on. I needed something stronger and something cheaper, something to make me feel that feeling again. Mike introduced me to 2 new substances, and these together were the solution to my problems. I began using dope and meth. After one particularly bad night, I began to feel nauseous. I didn't have much food in my stomach, but I couldn't stop vomiting. It felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest with each breath that I took. The world around me was spinning, and my heart was beating out of my chest. The back of my head pounded. I tried to ask for help, but no words came out. Everything around me went dark. I woke up in a hospital bed with my mother by my side. Apparently, somehow, someway, she was informed by someone that her son was literally on the brink of passing away. Long story short, she demanded I go into rehab, and so I did. I'm here right now, trying to salvage what is left of my pathetic life.